The day my sister Rebecca's perfect world crumbled started like any other of her picture-perfect days. She was hosting her lavish engagement party at her mansion, the same mansion our parents had left her in their will 5 years ago. I wasn't invited, of course. I hadn't been welcome in her world since the tragic accident that took our parents' lives. I still remember that rainy night. The police said their car lost control on the mountain road, plunging into the ravine below. Rebecca inherited everything. The family business, the properties, the investments. I got nothing. The will is clear, the family lawyer had said, not quite meeting my eyes. Everything goes to Rebecca. I was 23 then, fresh out of college, while Rebecca was 27 and already a successful businesswoman. At least that's what everyone thought. The truth was, she'd never worked a day in her life. Our parents' money had paved her way, buying her credentials, her connections, her entire gilded existence. For 5 years, I scraped by, working 2 jobs, living in a tiny apartment on the wrong side of town. Rebecca would occasionally see me at the grocery store or coffee shop and pretend not to know me. Once, when I desperately asked her for help with my mounting medical bills, she laughed. "You're pathetic, Sarah," she sneered, adjusting her designer sunglasses. "That's why Mom and Dad left you nothing. They knew you just waste it like you waste everything else in your life." But fate has a way of revealing the darkest secrets, and Rebecca's perfect world was built on the darkest secret of all. It started unraveling 3 months ago when Detective James Morrison showed up at my apartment. He was older now, gray-haired and retired, but I recognized him immediately. He'd been the lead investigator on our parents' case. "I couldn't sleep at night," he said, sitting at my tiny kitchen table. "Something about your parents' case never sat right with me. After I retired last month, I started digging. What I found," he pulled out a thick file and an old USB drive. "You need to see this." The security footage was grainy but clear enough. It showed Rebecca meeting with 2 men in a parking garage 3 days before our parents' accident. Money changed hands. Words were exchanged. Then, most stunning of all, Rebecca's voice. "Make it look like an accident. I don't care how you do it, just make sure Sarah gets nothing." My world stopped spinning. The coffee mug slipped from my hands, shattering on the floor. Detective Morrison's voice seemed to come from far away as he explained how he tracked down one of the men, now dying of cancer in prison, who confessed everything. "Your sister paid them to tamper with your parents' car," he said gently. "She knew they were planning to change their will. They discovered her embezzlement from the company, her fake credentials, everything. They were going to leave everything to you." I sat there, numb, as he laid out all the evidence. Bank transfers, phone records, witness statements. Rebecca hadn't just inherited our parents' fortune. She orchestrated their murder to get it, and she made sure I was left with nothing. "We can go to the police," Detective Morrison said, but I had a better idea. Rebecca's perfect life deserved a more poetic ending, which is how I found myself standing outside her mansion on the day of her engagement party, watching the guests arrive in their luxury cars. Rebecca had spared no expense. Ice sculptures, champagne fountains, a string quartet playing in the garden. Her fiancé, Thomas Wellington II, was old money. This marriage would cement her place in high society. I touched the USB drive in my pocket, containing copies of all Detective Morrison's evidence. Then I straightened my waitress uniform. It had been surprisingly easy to get hired for the catering staff, and walked through the service entrance. The party was in full swing when I saw her. Rebecca was radiant in a designer dress that probably cost more than I made in a year, dripping in our mother's jewelry, laughing with her society friends. She didn't even glance at me as I offered her champagne. "Thank you," she said dismissively, taking a glass. Then she did a double take, her face draining of color. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" "Security." "Is everything all right, dear?" Thomas appeared at her side, looking concerned. He was handsome in an old money way, with kind eyes that had no idea what kind of woman he was about to marry. "Just a minor issue with the help," Rebecca said quickly, her perfectly manicured hand gripping his arm. "Sarah was just leaving." "Actually," I said, loud enough for nearby guests to hear, "I think everyone here might be interested in seeing what Detective Morrison found about our parents' accident." Rebecca's champagne glass crashed to the marble floor. "You're lying," she hissed, but her face had gone ghost white. "Security. Get her out of here." But it was too late. Detective Morrison himself had walked in through the front door, still commanding attention even in retirement. And he wasn't alone. 2 active duty detectives flanked him, along with the district attorney himself. Rebecca Montgomery, one of the detectives, said, his voice cutting through the sudden silence, "We need to ask you some questions about the night of October 15th, 5 years ago." The security footage began playing on the massive screen that had been set up for a slideshow of Rebecca and Thomas's romantic journey. Instead, party guests watched in horror as Rebecca plotted our parents' murder in that dark parking garage. That's not what it looks like," Rebecca stammered, backing away. Her perfect makeup was starting to run as sweat beaded on her forehead. "Sarah is lying. She's always been jealous of me. Thomas, tell them." But Thomas had already stepped away from her, his face a mask of disgust. The whispers were spreading through the crowd like wildfire. Rebecca's perfect world was shattering like her champagne glass on the marble floor. "Mrs. Montgomery," Detective Morrison said formally, "I think it's time we finish our conversation from 5 years ago." The next few hours were a blur of police statements, shocked guests hurrying to their cars, and Rebecca's increasingly hysterical denials. I watched as the officers led her away in handcuffs, her perfect makeup streaked with tears, her designer dress wrinkled from struggling against the inevitable. "I did everything for this family," she screamed as they escorted her out. "I deserved that money. Sarah was always the favorite. They were going to ruin everything." Thomas stood frozen, the engagement ring box he planned to present during the party's climax still in his pocket. His family had built their fortune over generations, and reputation meant everything to them. As Rebecca was placed in the police car, his father pulled him aside, whispering furiously about damage control. But I wasn't done yet. Detective Morrison had been thorough in his investigation, beyond thorough. He'd uncovered not just the murder plot, but years of Rebecca's financial crimes. Embezzlement, money laundering, tax evasion. The evidence was overwhelming. "Your parents suspected," he told me later at the police station. They'd hired a private investigator 3 months before their death. They discovered Rebecca had been stealing from the company for years, faking credentials, bribing officials. They were devastated. He handed me another file. "This was in your father's private safe. We found it during the new investigation." Inside was a draft of a new will, dated just days before their death. They had planned to transfer everything to me, knowing Rebecca's crimes would soon be exposed. "There's more," Detective Morrison said quietly. "Your mother left this for you." He pulled out an envelope yellowed with age. Inside was a letter and a small key. "My dearest Sarah," the letter began in my mother's elegant handwriting. "If you're reading this, something has happened to us. I've always known you were the stronger one, the one with true integrity. Rebecca, we failed her somehow. We gave her too much, expected too little. The key is to my private safe at First National Bank. What's inside will protect your future, no matter what happens." The safe contained documents revealing a hidden fortune, investments, offshore accounts, properties Rebecca had known nothing about. "Your mother was brilliant with money," Detective Morrison explained. "She built an empire separate from your father's company, and she left it all to you." The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind. Rebecca's trial was swift, the evidence against her insurmountable. She pleaded guilty to avoid the death penalty, receiving multiple life sentences instead. I attended every day of the trial, watching my sister's perfect facade crumble as the truth emerged. Her society friends abandoned her. Thomas's family issued a scathing public statement denouncing her. The business world that had once celebrated her success now dissected her crimes in gleaming magazines. Black Widow Harris, they called her. Murderous socialite brought down by sister's justice. But the real shock came during the asset forfeiture hearing. Not only did I inherit our parents' original estate, but Rebecca's crimes meant all her assets were seized. The judge, after reviewing the draft will and evidence of Rebecca's manipulation, ordered everything transferred to me. The mansion, the business, every penny she'd stolen. "You can't do this," Rebecca shrieked when the judgment was read. "I built that life. It's mine." But her words rang hollow in the courtroom, just like her soul. "I sold the mansion. Too many dark memories. Instead, I moved into a comfortable penthouse downtown and took control of our parents' company." Years of working multiple jobs had taught me the value of hard work and integrity. Under my leadership, the company flourished. But my parents' legacy wasn't just about money. I established the Montgomery Foundation for Victim Support, helping families affected by financial crimes. Every year, we funded investigations into unsolved cases, giving other families the closure we finally found. Detective Morrison joined the foundation's board after retiring. "Your parents would be proud," he told me at the opening ceremony, "not just of your success, but of how you're using it to help others." I visited Rebecca once in prison. She aged decades in just months, her designer clothes replaced by an orange jumpsuit, her perfectly manicured hands now raw and chapped. "Was it worth it?" I asked her. "All the lies, the murder, the perfect life you built on our parents' graves." She stared at me through the glass, her eyes hollow. "You don't understand," she whispered. "I had to be special. I had to be perfect. They were going to take it all away." "No, Rebecca," I replied, standing to leave. "You took it all away yourself." As I walked out of the prison, I touched the locket I now wore, the one found in Mom's safe. Inside was a family photo from happier times, before greed and jealousy poisoned everything. I kept it as a reminder that true wealth isn't measured in dollars or social status, but in integrity and compassion. The company thrived under my leadership, not through deception but through honest hard work. Thomas, who'd reached out months after the arrest to apologize for not seeing through Rebecca's facade, eventually became a trusted business partner. Life had a way of putting people where they belonged. 5 years after Rebecca's perfect world imploded, I stood at our parents' graves, placing fresh flowers. The morning dew sparkled on the granite headstones like tiny diamonds, more beautiful than any jewelry Rebecca had ever worn. "We found justice," I whispered to them. "And I promise, your legacy will help others find theirs too." Walking back to my car, I passed a young woman struggling with grocery bags. I stopped to help her, remembering my own days of hardship. She thanked me profusely, not knowing who I was, not knowing I was now one of the wealthiest women in the city. But that's the thing about true wealth. It's not about mansions or designer clothes or society parties. It's about who you are when nobody's watching. Rebecca never understood that. She'd wanted the perfect life so badly, she killed for it. But in the end, she'd lost everything that actually mattered. Me? I had everything that did matter. Purpose, integrity, the chance to make a difference. And most importantly, I had peace, something Rebecca's perfect life had never given her. As I drove away from the cemetery, the morning sun painted the sky in shades of hope. Sometimes justice takes time, but it always arrives. And when it does, it reveals that the most perfect lives are often built on the darkest lies.